Fleet Commander Zax Thule stood before the holographic display of the third planet, its blue-green surface swirling with white clouds. To his 4 eyes, it appeared pristine, a garden world ripe for conquest. The briefing had been simple, primitive. Bipeds, barely past nuclear fission, no energy shields, no plasma weaponry, another easy addition to the hegemony's ever-expanding territory. Such a beautiful world, mused Science Officer Krellant, her tentacles dancing across the sensor array. Look at those vast oceans, those green continents. The inhabitants must have had everything handed to them by their benevolent star. Admiral Vorth clicked his mandibles in agreement. The ancient warrior had conquered 17 systems, each falling within cycles. My scouts report the natives spend much of their time in recreational activities, something called sports, where they compete without killing each other. Clearly a soft species that has never known true hardship. The fleet's War Council examined the intelligence reports with growing confidence. Humans lived in structures made of wood and metal rather than reinforced quantum steel. They moved in primitive wheeled vehicles instead of hovering battle platforms. Most damning of all, they kept smaller creatures as pets, a concept so foreign that the translators struggled with the word. They've domesticated predators, noted Tactical Officer Vren, his scales shifting to an amused purple. They keep creatures called cats and dogs in their dwellings for emotional comfort. What kind of apex species needs emotional support from lesser beings? Commander Zax Thule felt the familiar thrill of an easy victory approaching. The humans had been observed for several cycles, their broadcasts intercepted and decoded. They made entertainment about fictional conflicts, suggesting they had no real experience with warfare. Their leaders spent more time arguing with each other in grand assemblies than preparing for battle. "Initiate the Standard Conquest Protocol," Zax Thule commanded, his confidence absolute. 3 battle groups should be more than sufficient. We'll establish orbital superiority, eliminate their primitive military assets, and begin the subjugation process. I estimate total pacification within 1 solar rotation. As the massive hegemony warships powered their quantum drives and began their descent toward the unsuspecting blue world, none aboard could have imagined they were about to make first contact with a species that had clawed its way to dominance. On a planet that would be classified as a Class W3 death world, a planet so hostile that most hegemony species would die within moments of breathing its atmosphere. The greatest predators in galactic history were about to learn what it meant to hunt the ultimate survivors. The invasion began at dawn over what humans called the Pacific Ocean. 3 hegemony battle groups descended through Earth's atmosphere in perfect formation, their shields shimmering against the primitive planet's surprisingly violent solar radiation. Commander Zax Thule watched with satisfaction as his forces prepared to demonstrate the futility of resistance. "Sir," Communications Officer Velta reported, her voice uncertain, "we are receiving multiple transmissions from the surface. The humans are coordinating." "Coordinating what?" Zax Thule scoffed. "Their surrender." The first shock came when human aircraft rose to meet them, not fleeing as expected, but attacking. These weren't the crude flying machines the reconnaissance had suggested, but sleek predators loaded with explosive projectiles. When hegemony fighters engaged, expecting easy victories, they discovered that human pilots possessed a terrifying willingness to ram enemy vessels when their weapons failed. Lieutenant Kreshna, piloting a superiority fighter, screamed over the comm, "They're insane! This one's weapons are depleted, but he's still coming straight at me. He's going to—" The transmission ended in static. On the ground, human military forces didn't break and scatter as every other species had done. Instead, they dug in, adapted, and began coordinating with a precision that suggested they'd been preparing for this exact scenario their entire evolutionary history. When hegemony ground troops landed, they expected the humans to flee from their advanced weaponry and superior armor. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that treated every building, every street, every piece of terrain as a weapon. Humans disappeared into structures that seemed solid, only to emerge behind hegemony forces. They turned their own vehicles into mobile bombs. Children as young as 12 cycles were observed providing intelligence to adult fighters with a casual efficiency that chilled even veteran warriors. "How do they move so silently?" demanded Assault Commander Threx as his 6th patrol failed to return. "Our sensors show no movement, then suddenly we're under attack from 3 directions." Science Officer Krelland studied the tactical displays with growing unease. "Commander, I'm detecting something unusual about these humans. Their stress responses are inverted. The longer we fight, the more coordinated they become. It's as if combat clarifies their thinking rather than disrupting it. But the most disturbing discovery came when a human prisoner was brought aboard the flagship. The creature, a female specimen calling herself Colonel Martinez, showed no signs of the submission reflex that marked defeated prey species. "You don't understand what you've done," she said calmly, her predator's eyes never leaving Zax Thul's face. "You've made a species-wide mistake. We don't just fight to survive, we fight because we're good at it. And we've been practicing for thousands of years." The prisoner's confidence was unsettling, but it was her next words that sent ice through the commander's circulatory system. "Wait until you meet our veterans." By the 3rd day of what should have been a routine conquest, Commander Zax Thul found himself staring at casualty reports that defied all tactical models. The hegemony had lost more ships and troops in 72 hours than in their last 5 conquests combined. "Sir," reported Intelligence Officer Nexara, his usually steady voice cracking, "we've intercepted human communications. They're not just defending anymore. They're studying us." The evidence was undeniable. Human forces had begun adapting to hegemony tactics faster than the invaders could implement new strategies. Worse, they were turning captured technology against its creators with an efficiency that spoke of an intuitive understanding of warfare that went beyond mere learning. Captain Irolth limped into the command center, her exoskeleton cracked, her squadron decimated. "They've weaponized their entire planet," she gasped. "The creatures they keep as pets. They're using them as scouts and attack vectors." I watched a small, furry beast called a dog guide human fighters directly to our hidden position. And the larger ones, the horses, they're using them to move silently through terrain our sensors can't penetrate. But it was Tactical Officer Vren who delivered the most chilling report. "Commander, we've been monitoring human broadcasts. They're treating this as what they call a learning experience. They're literally using our invasion to test new weapons and strategies." The holographic display showed a compilation of human activities that defied comprehension. In one region, humans had somehow turned the planet's weather against the invaders, creating localized storms that disrupted hegemony sensors. In another, they had awakened what they casually referred to as wildlife, creatures that the science division was frantically reclassifying as apex predators. "Look at this," Science Officer Krelland projected an image of what humans called a grizzly bear. "This creature weighs over 300 kilograms of pure muscle and can run at 55 kilometers per hour. The humans consider it moderately dangerous and share territory with it willingly. What kind of death world produces such monsters and then breeds creatures capable of coexisting with them?" The answer came in fragments as the invasion continued to deteriorate. Humans didn't just adapt to hostile environments, they actively sought them out. Their extreme sports weren't recreation but training. Their horror stories weren't fiction but cultural memory. Their pets weren't companions but domesticated weapons systems maintained across generations. Admiral Vorth, his carapace dulled with exhaustion, delivered the report no one wanted to hear. "They're not just fighting us, Commander. They're hunting us. My ground forces report that humans have begun tracking our patrol patterns. They know where we're going before we get there." The final straw came when human forces launched their first counterattack against an orbital platform. The boarding party moved through the ship like they owned it, systematically dismantling defenses with a precision that spoke of countless generations spent perfecting the art of killing efficiently. As alarms blared throughout the flagship, Zax Thul realized the horrible truth. They hadn't invaded a garden world inhabited by peaceful primitives. They had attacked a planet-sized training ground populated by the galaxy's most successful predators, and now those predators were coming for them. Admiral Vorth's emergency transmission crackled through the fleet's communications array, his voice stripped of its usual military composure. "All units, this is Battle Group 7. We are being hunted by human children." The statement would have been laughable if not for the tactical footage that accompanied it. Human juveniles, some appearing no older than 15 standard cycles, were systematically dismantling hegemony ground positions using improvised weapons and terrain knowledge that bordered on supernatural. "They move like ghosts," reported Sergeant. "Kill Exnor from the surface." One moment the area is clear, the next we're surrounded by tiny humans who know exactly where our armor is weakest. They're using tools we don't even recognize, metal projectile weapons that require no power source, but somehow penetrate our shields. Commander Zax Thul watched the tactical displays with growing horror. The humans weren't just resisting, they were treating the invasion as an educational opportunity. Children observed combat techniques, then improved upon them within hours. Adults shared knowledge across vast distances using primitive but effective communication networks. Science Officer Krellant's latest report painted an even more disturbing picture. "Sir, I've been analyzing the human homeworld's biosphere. This planet is actively trying to kill everything on it. The atmosphere contains toxic levels of oxygen that would burn the lungs of most species. The weather systems regularly produce storms with wind speeds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. The geological activity is constant: volcanic eruptions, seismic shifts, massive floods. And yet," she continued, her tentacles trembling, "humans don't just survive this, they thrive in it. They've built permanent settlements in areas that would be classified as uninhabitable death zones. They climb mountains that would crush most species under atmospheric pressure alone, for recreation." The intelligence kept getting worse. Humans had domesticated creatures that other species would classify as weapons of mass destruction. Their cattle weighed nearly a metric ton and could trample armored vehicles. Their chickens were descended from creatures called dinosaurs that had once ruled their planet as apex predators. Most unsettling was the discovery of human warfare history. Lieutenant Velshaw, reviewing intercepted educational broadcasts, reported findings that shook the entire command structure. They've been fighting each other for their entire recorded history. Not for resources or territory, for abstract concepts like freedom and honor. They've developed over 300 different ways to conduct warfare, and they study the failures of their ancestors to avoid repeating tactical mistakes. The breaking point came when human forces began their first orbital assault. Using nothing but modified industrial equipment and pure audacity, they had launched themselves into space aboard primitive chemical rockets, breached a hegemony cruiser, and systematically captured it from the inside out. Captain Jelrix's final transmission was barely coherent. "They're inside the ship, moving through the ventilation systems like they built them. They know our technology better than we do. How is that possible? They've had access to our systems for less than a week." The answer came from an unexpected source. The human prisoner, Colonel Martinez, who had somehow maintained access to her people's communications despite being held in maximum security. "You still don't understand," she said, watching Zax Thul review the casualty reports. "You think this is us fighting at full capacity? This is us holding back because we're learning about you? We're curious about your technology, your tactics, your biology. We're treating this as a study session." Her next words would haunt the hegemony fleet. "Wait until we stop being curious and start being serious." The message that would change galactic history arrived on the 7th day of what historians would later call The Earth incident. It came from the Galactic Preservation Council, transmitted on emergency frequencies to all hegemony vessels in the Sol system. Hegemony Fleet, this is Counselor Vex High of the Tellurian Archive. Cease all operations immediately. You have made contact with a Tier 1 Death World species. Repeat, cease all operations. You are engaged with apex predators. Commander Zaxthul's response was bitter laughter. Too late for warnings, Counselor. We're already learning what that means. The tactical situation had become a nightmare beyond military comprehension. Human resistance had evolved from defensive to aggressively predatory. They had stopped trying to drive the invaders away and had begun actively hunting them across multiple theaters of operation simultaneously. Sir, reported what remained of his intelligence staff, human forces have divided into specialized hunting groups. They're using our own communication frequencies to coordinate attacks. They've somehow learned to speak our language in less than a week. The humans had done something unprecedented in galactic military history. They had turned an invasion into a learning laboratory. Every hegemony tactic was studied, countered, and improved upon. Every piece of captured technology was reverse-engineered and weaponized. Every fallen invader became a source of biological and tactical intelligence. Science Officer Krellant's final report was delivered from a medical bay, her tentacles wrapped in regeneration fields. They've been toying with us. The weapons they used in the first days, those were what they call conventional arms. They have others, much worse others. They showed me images of weapons that crack planets, Commander. They've had them for decades and chose not to use them. The revelation that broke Zaxthul's remaining composure came from intercepted human broadcasts. Military leaders across Earth were arguing not about whether to deploy their most devastating weapons, but about which ones would provide the best educational value for future encounters. They're debating whether to use nuclear weapons or something they call Project Thor, translated Communications Officer Velta, her voice hollow with shock. Not because they need them to win, but because they want to test their effectiveness against our shield technology. The end came not with the surrender of the hegemony fleet, but with a simple message broadcast on all frequencies in perfect hegemony standard dialect. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. You have 48 hours to withdraw all forces from our system. This is not a negotiation. This is a professional courtesy extended to a learning opportunity that has concluded. The message continued. Be advised that Earth is claiming salvage rights to all abandoned equipment and vessels. We appreciate the field testing opportunity you've provided. Your tactics have been integrated into our military education programs. As the battered remnants of the hegemony fleet limped away from Earth's solar system, they carried with them a warning that would echo through the galaxy. They had not encountered a primitive species ripe for conquest, but rather a planet-sized military academy populated by apex predators who treated warfare as both art and science. Behind them, Earth's children were already studying the stars, curious about what other lessons the galaxy might teach them. The Asid hunters had tasted the void, and they found it interesting. The age of human expansion was about to begin.